It was a quiet afternoon at St. Mary's Hospital, the kind of calm that nurses like Emily Carter always dreaded. Experience had taught her that these moments of peace never lasted long. A sudden rush of emergencies was inevitable. A car crash, a heart attack, or some other life-altering event that would disrupt the fragile serenity. Emily, in her early 30s, was used to the unpredictability of the job. She thrived on it, but nothing could prepare her for what was about to happen. The faint hum of the hospital's automatic doors opening and closing blended with the beeping monitors and the chatter of nurses at the station. Emily stood by the reception desk, glancing at her watch. Her shift was almost over, and she was looking forward to heading home for a quiet evening with her dog, Milo. She smiled at the thought, picturing him wagging his tail at the door as she walked in. Suddenly, the doors slid open again, but this time, the usual whoosh of air was accompanied by gasps and muffled screams from the few visitors in the lobby. Emily looked up, her eyes narrowing in confusion. People were stepping back, clutching their children, pointing toward the entrance. A deep, guttural growl echoed through the space, reverberating off the sterile walls. Emily's breath caught in her throat. A tiger, a massive, regal-looking creature, was walking calmly through the hospital doors. The tiger's orange coat gleamed under the fluorescent lights, its black stripes rippling like ink on silk. Its amber eyes scanned the room with an unsettling intelligence. But what shocked Emily the most wasn't just the sight of a tiger in the hospital. It was what the animal carried gently in its jaws. A baby. The tiger padded forward with a slow, deliberate gait. The baby wrapped snugly in a tattered blanket. The child's tiny hands peeked out from the fabric, and Emily's trained eyes quickly assessed that the infant was alive, though motionless. Her heart raced, every instinct screaming at her to act, but her feet felt rooted to the floor in disbelief. The tiger approached the reception desk, its massive paws making barely a sound on the polished floor. Nurses and security guards stood frozen, unsure of how to react. One security guard shakily reached for his radio, but Emily waved him off. "Wait," she whispered. "Don't startle it." The tiger stopped a few feet from the desk and gently lowered the baby to the ground. It stepped back, its gaze locked on Emily. There was no aggression in its posture, only purpose. It had come here for a reason. Emily's mind raced with questions. Where had the tiger come from? Why was it carrying a baby? And, perhaps most importantly, how did it know to bring the child to a hospital? Her heart pounded as she knelt slowly, her eyes never leaving the tiger's. The animal watched her intently, its tail flicking once before it sat down, regal and composed. Emily reached out with practiced care, gently picking up the baby. The child stirred, letting out a soft whimper. Relief washed over Emily. The baby was alive. Behind her, someone whispered, "Is this really happening?" Emily stood, cradling the baby in her arms. Her hands trembled slightly as she turned to the nearest nurse. "Get a doctor, now!" The nurse snapped out of her daze and rushed down the hall. The security guard, still wary, took a cautious step forward. "Should we call animal control?" Emily glanced back at the tiger, which remained seated, its gaze unwavering. Something about the animal's demeanor stopped her from agreeing. "No," she said firmly. "Not yet." The hospital staff whispered and stared, their fear mingled with curiosity. Some visitors pulled out their phones, recording the surreal scene. Emily ignored them all, her focus solely on the baby in her arms. She gently pulled back the blanket, inspecting the child. The baby appeared to be around 6 months old, with soft, chubby cheeks and wide brown eyes that blinked up at her with trust and innocence. "Hi there," Emily whispered, her voice soothing. "You're safe now." The baby reached out, grasping Emily's finger with surprising strength. The simple gesture made Emily's throat tighten with emotion. She had seen countless emergencies in her career, children injured, abandoned, or worse. But something about this situation felt profoundly different. The tiger let out a low rumble, drawing her attention back to the animal. It hadn't moved an inch, sitting as still as a statue. Its gaze flicked from Emily to the baby and back again, as if ensuring the child was in good hands. Emily swallowed hard. This wasn't random. The tiger knew exactly what it was doing. A doctor hurried into the lobby, his eyes widening at the sight of the tiger. "What in the world?" "Focus on the baby," Emily said quickly, handing the child over. "We need to make sure they're okay." The doctor nodded, taking the baby with care. Let's get them to the emergency room. Emily turned back to the tiger, her mind racing. The animal showed no signs of leaving, nor did it appear agitated. It simply sat there, watching. The air felt thick with unspoken understanding, a silent exchange between the tiger and the nurse. "Why are you here?" Emily whispered, half expecting an answer. As the baby was taken away for a thorough examination, Emily stayed behind, unable to tear herself away from the tiger. Memories from her childhood flickered in her mind, stories her grandfather used to tell about wild animals displaying unexpected compassion. Her grandfather, a retired zookeeper, had always believed that animals understood more than humans gave them credit for. He would share tales of elephants mourning their dead, dolphins rescuing drowning swimmers, and even lions adopting orphaned animals in the wild. "Animals have hearts, Emily," he would say. "Sometimes they show more kindness than people do." Those words echoed now as Emily stood before the tiger. She could feel it in her bones. This wasn't a random encounter. This tiger had brought the baby here for a reason. The question was why. As Emily studied the tiger, she noticed something peculiar, a tag on its collar. Carefully, she inched closer, mindful not to make any sudden movements. The tiger remained calm, its eyes following her every step. She crouched down and reached out, fingers brushing the tag. The metal was engraved with a name, Raja. Below it was the logo of a local wildlife sanctuary. Emily's heart skipped a beat. She knew that sanctuary. It was located about 30 miles outside of town, a place that rehabilitated rescued animals from abusive environments. She had visited it once during a fundraiser and remembered hearing about a tiger named Raja who had been saved from a cruel circus. "Raja," she whispered, "is that you?" The tiger blinked slowly, as if acknowledging its name. Emily straightened, her mind spinning with questions. How had Raja ended up here? And why did he have a baby? The sanctuary staff would have answers, but for now, Emily needed to keep everyone safe. Turning to the security guard, she said, "Call the wildlife sanctuary. Tell them we have one of their tigers." The guard hesitated. "Are you sure? What if it gets aggressive?" Emily shook her head. "He won't. He's here for a reason." As the minutes ticked by, more hospital staff gathered at a safe distance, watching the tiger in awe. Raja remained calm, his presence commanding respect and curiosity. Then, the head zookeeper from the sanctuary arrived, his face pale with shock. "Raja," he breathed, stepping closer. "What are you doing here, boy?" Emily approached him. "You know him?" "Of course," the zookeeper said. "He's one of our rescues, but how did he get here? And why is he carrying a baby?" Emily's voice softened. "That's what we need to find out." The zookeeper knelt, holding out his hand cautiously. Raja sniffed it before giving a soft huff, a sign of recognition. "There's a story here," the zookeeper murmured, "and I think it's more incredible than we can imagine." Just then, the doctor returned with the baby, a look of astonishment on his face. "Emily," he said, "you need to see this." He handed her a piece of paper found tucked inside the baby's blanket, a note that would change everything. Emily's hands trembled as she unfolded it, her eyes scanning the words. Her breath hitched and tears welled in her eyes. "What is it?" the zookeeper asked. Emily looked up, her voice breaking with emotion. The baby was left in Raja's care. The mystery deepened, and Emily knew this was only the beginning of a story that would change her life forever. Emily Carter stared at the crumpled note in her hand, her heart pounding as she read the hastily scrawled words. The message was short, but packed with urgency. "Her name is Lily. Take care of her. Raja will protect." Her mind reeled with questions. Who was Lily? Who had left her in Raja's care? And why did they trust a tiger, a wild animal, to deliver a baby to safety? The zookeeper, still kneeling beside Raja, looked equally stunned. This doesn't make any sense," he said, shaking his head. "Tigers don't do things like this. Raja has always been gentle, but to carry a baby like that, to walk into a hospital, that's not instinct. It's something more." Emily nodded slowly, her gaze shifting between the tiger and the baby now nestled in the doctor's arms. Raja remained calm, sitting patiently as if waiting for further instructions. His golden eyes flicked toward Lily, a protective glint shining in them. "Is there any chance someone from the sanctuary left the note?" Emily asked, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions brewing inside her. The zookeeper frowned. "I don't think so. We do have staff who stay overnight, but I haven't heard of anyone bringing a baby to the sanctuary. This is..." He trailed off, struggling to find the right words. "It's unprecedented." Emily's mind raced, piecing together fragments of the puzzle. "You said Raja was rescued from a circus?" The zookeeper nodded. "Yes, he was part of a traveling show that shut down after reports of animal abuse. We took him in about 5 years ago. He was in bad shape, malnourished, scars from mistreatment. But he's thrived with us. He's always been calm around people. But this..." He gestured toward the baby. "This is beyond anything we've seen." Emily's gaze softened as she looked at Raja. Maybe he was more than just a show animal. Maybe he learned something from his time with humans. The zookeeper sighed, his eyes distant as he recounted Raja's story. "When we first got Raja, he was skittish around adults, but surprisingly calm with children. One of our volunteers, a teenage girl, formed a bond with him. She'd sit outside his enclosure for hours, talking to him, reading books. Raja would listen, like he understood every word." Emily leaned in, captivated by the story. "What happened to her?" The zookeeper's expression darkened. "Her name was Sophie, and she disappeared 2 years ago. We never found out what happened to her. She just vanished." Emily's heart ached at the mention of a missing child. "Do you think this could be connected? Maybe Sophie left Lily in Raja's care?" The zookeeper shrugged, a mixture of hope and doubt in his eyes. "It's possible. Sophie loved animals, especially Raja. If something happened to her and she needed to protect Lily, I could see her trusting him." The thought lingered in Emily's mind. Was Sophie Lily's mother? Had she somehow known Raja would protect the baby better than anyone else? As they spoke, the hospital staff remained on edge. The presence of a tiger in the lobby wasn't something they dealt with every day. A few nurses whispered nervously, and security guards hovered nearby, unsure whether to intervene. The head doctor approached Emily, concern etched into his features. "Emily, we need to figure out what to do next. We can't keep a tiger in the hospital." Emily glanced at Raja, who seemed utterly unbothered by the commotion around him. "He's not hurting anyone," she said firmly. "He's here for a reason." The doctor sighed. "I understand, but this is a hospital, not a wildlife sanctuary. The baby is stable, but we need to notify child services, and animal control will have to handle the tiger." The mention of animal control made Emily's stomach turn. "No," she said sharply. "Raja isn't a threat. He brought Lily here to save her." The zookeeper stepped forward. "I'll take responsibility for Raja. He's one of ours. I'll stay with him until we figure this out." The doctor hesitated but nodded. "Fine, but we need answers soon." While the hospital staff tended to Lily, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that the key to the mystery lay with Raja. She approached the tiger cautiously, kneeling to meet his gaze. "Raja," she whispered, "why did you bring her here? Where did you come from?" The tiger's eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, Emily felt an inexplicable connection. It was as if Raja understood her question, though he couldn't answer in words. Suddenly, Raja stood up. The zookeeper tensed, ready to intervene, but Raja didn't act aggressively. Instead, he turned toward the entrance, glancing back at Emily as if urging her to follow. Emily stood, her heart pounding. "He wants us to go with him." The zookeeper nodded slowly. "Let's follow him." Raja led them outside, moving with purpose toward a familiar path. Emily, the zookeeper, and a few hospital staff followed cautiously, keeping their distance. As they walked, the zookeeper explained more about the sanctuary. "We've always believed Raja had a unique bond with people," he said, "but I never imagined he'd do something like this." The group arrived at the sanctuary gates, where Raja paused, waiting patiently for the zookeeper to unlock them. Inside, the sanctuary was peaceful, a haven for rescued animals. Raja guided them to his enclosure, where he lay down beside a small makeshift shelter. Emily approached, her eyes scanning the area. That's when she saw it, a faded photograph tucked inside the shelter. She picked it up, her breath catching in her throat. The photo showed a teenage girl with a wide smile, her arm draped around Raja's neck. In her other arm, she held a baby. Emily turned the photo over, her heart racing as she read the words scrawled on the back. Sophie and Lily, forever. Tears welled in Emily's eyes. "It's her," she whispered. "Sophie is Lily's mother." The zookeeper took the photo, his expression somber. She must have trusted Raja to keep Lily safe. Emily wiped her tears, her mind racing. "We need to find out what happened to Sophie. If she left Lily with Raja, it means she was in danger." They searched the shelter and found more clues. A diary, notes scribbled on scraps of paper. Sophie had chronicled her life at the sanctuary, her love for Raja, and her fears about someone trying to take Lily away. Emily's hands trembled as she read the final entry. "If anything happens to me, Raja will know what to do. He'll keep Lily safe." As they pieced together Sophie's story, a picture began to emerge. Sophie had been on the run, hiding from someone who wanted to take Lily. She had sought refuge at the sanctuary, knowing Raja would protect them both. Emily's heart broke for the young mother, who had placed her faith in a tiger to save her child. The zookeeper's voice was thick with emotion. She trusted Raja more than anyone else, and he delivered. Emily knelt beside Raja, her voice soft. "You saved her, didn't you? You kept your promise." Raja rumbled softly, his eyes closing briefly in what seemed like acknowledgement. Just as they were beginning to understand the full story, the sound of approaching vehicles shattered the peaceful moment. Emily turned to see two black SUVs pulling up outside the sanctuary gates. Men in suits stepped out, their expressions cold and determined. "Who are they?" Emily asked, her voice tense. The zookeeper's face paled. "I don't know, but they don't look like animal control." Emily's protective instincts kicked in. "They're here for Lily." Raja let out a low growl, sensing the threat. Emily stood tall, her gaze steely. "We won't let them take her." The black SUVs idled just outside the sanctuary gates, their engines rumbling ominously in the quiet afternoon. Emily Carter's heart pounded in her chest as she watched the suited men step out, their expressions cold and calculating. They moved with purpose, their eyes scanning the sanctuary grounds as if they were on a mission. Beside her, the zookeeper, whose name she now knew was David Turner, shifted nervously. "They're not here to help," he muttered. "I've seen men like that before. They're here to take something." Emily cradled baby Lily tighter, her protective instincts in overdrive. Raja, the tiger who had brought Lily to the hospital, stood at Emily's side, his presence both comforting and commanding. His low growl rumbled through the air, a warning to anyone who dared threaten the child. "They're here for her," Emily whispered, her voice steady despite the fear gripping her. David nodded grimly. "And we can't let them take her." The men approached the gate, their eyes locking onto Emily and David. One of them, a tall man with slicked back hair and a dark suit, stepped forward. His voice was smooth, but carried an unsettling undertone of authority. "We're with Child Services," he announced, holding up a badge. "We've come to take custody of the baby." Emily's eyes narrowed. Something about the man's demeanor didn't sit right with her. His badge looked legitimate, but his cold, emotionless tone betrayed his true intentions. "You're not with Child Services," she said firmly. "Who are you really?" The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Ms. Carter, you're a nurse. You know the protocol. This baby has no known guardian. We're here to ensure her safety." Emily took a step forward, holding Lily protectively. "Lily is safe with us. She was left in the care of Raja, and he brought her to the hospital to protect her. Who sent you?" The man's smile vanished. "That's none of your concern. Hand over the child." Raja let out a louder growl, stepping between Emily and the men. The suited men hesitated, their bravado faltering as they faced the massive tiger. David crossed his arms. "You're not getting through that gate." The lead man's jaw clenched. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." Emily's mind raced. These men weren't here to help. They were part of the same danger Sophie had been running from. The notes in Sophie's journal hinted at someone pursuing her and Lily. These men were the ones she feared. As the tension mounted, Raja stepped closer to the gate, his eyes locked on the intruders. His growls deepened, vibrating through the ground. The men took a step back, clearly unnerved. The leader glared at Emily. "You're making a mistake. You can't keep the child. The law is on our side." Emily met his gaze, her voice unwavering. No, the law is on Lily's side, and so are we. David nodded in agreement. This sanctuary is private property. You're trespassing. The man's expression darkened. We'll be back, and next time, we won't come alone. With that, the men retreated to their SUVs, the tires kicking up gravel as they sped away. Once the men were gone, Emily and David exhaled in unison. Raja relaxed slightly, his growls fading, but he remained alert, pacing near the gate like a sentry on duty. We need to find out who those men are, Emily said, her mind racing. They're not going to give up. David nodded. Let's go through Sophie's notes again. Maybe there's something we missed. Back inside the sanctuary's office, Emily spread out the diary and the notes Sophie had left behind. As they sifted through the pages, a clearer picture began to form. Sophie had been running from a powerful, corrupt organization, one with ties to illegal adoption rings. They had been after Lily since birth, wanting to sell her to the highest bidder. Sophie had fled with her baby, finding refuge at the sanctuary where Raja became Lily's unlikely guardian. She knew they wouldn't stop, Emily said softly, her fingers tracing Sophie's handwriting. That's why she trusted Raja. She knew he would protect Lily when no one else could. David sighed. It makes sense now. Raja always had a bond with Sophie. He must have understood her fear. He knew Lily needed to be kept safe. The next day, word of the tiger's incredible act of protection spread throughout the town. News outlets picked up the story, and soon the sanctuary was flooded with calls and visitors, all wanting to see the tiger who had saved a baby. But not all the attention was positive. David pulled Emily aside, worry etched into his face. We've had more strange calls, people asking about Lily. I think those men are watching us. Emily clenched her jaw. We need to be ready. David nodded. We'll protect her, and we'll get the community involved. Together, they reached out to local law enforcement and community leaders. They shared Sophie's story, the mother who had trusted a tiger to save her child, and the town rallied around them. People began keeping watch outside the sanctuary, ensuring no one suspicious got too close. Raja became a symbol of protection and loyalty, and the town embraced him as a hero. Despite the community's efforts, Emily knew the danger wasn't over. The men would come back. They always did. Late one night, as Emily sat by Lily's crib in the sanctuary's main building, she heard footsteps outside. Her heart pounded as she peered through the window, spotting two shadowy figures creeping toward the building. David! She whispered urgently, shaking him awake. David grabbed a flashlight and his phone. Stay here with Lily. I'll check it out. Emily nodded, holding Lily close. But as David stepped outside, Raja appeared from the shadows, his eyes glowing in the moonlight. The tiger growled, low and menacing, and the figures froze. They hadn't expected the guardian to be on patrol. Raja advanced slowly, his growls growing louder. One of the men stumbled backward, tripping over a rock. The other man panicked and bolted, leaving his partner behind. David stepped forward, shining his flashlight on the terrified man. You're done, he said firmly. The police are on their way. The authorities arrived quickly, arresting the man and identifying him as one of the key figures in the illegal adoption ring. His confession led to the dismantling of the operation, and several other arrests followed. Lily was safe at last. As the dust settled, Emily found herself standing outside Raja's enclosure, watching the tiger as he lounged in the afternoon sun. She felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude toward the animal who had done so much to protect an innocent life. Thank you, Raja, she whispered. The tiger lifted his head, his eyes meeting hers. For a moment, it seemed as though he understood her words. Months later, Emily stood in the courthouse, signing the final papers to become Lily's legal guardian. She had grown to love the child as her own and couldn't imagine life without her. David stood beside her, grinning. She's lucky to have you. Emily smiled, tears brimming in her eyes. I'm the lucky one. Back at the sanctuary, a small crowd had gathered to celebrate Lily's adoption. Raja watched from his enclosure, his presence a calming force. As Emily held Lily in her arms, she whispered, You'll always be safe, little one. Raja made sure of that. The tiger let out a soft rumble, a guardian's promise that he would always be there to protect those in need. In the end, Raja's legacy wasn't just about saving one child. It was about showing the world that love, loyalty, and protection can come from the most unexpected places.